Welcome to the Word of Mouth Podcast, a series of honest, inspiring conversations with creatives from all walks of life, some in our industry, others far outside it. What connects them all? Passion, persistence, and the courage to keep creating. So listen in and get inspired. Look up our guest, and if you find yourself nodding along, feeling seen, or more hopeful, hit subscribe. Join our journey, and let's keep this conversation going. Let's keep spreading these stories the way they were meant to be shared, by word of mouth. Welcome back to another episode of the Word of Mouth Podcast presented by Johnny Davis Digital. We're joined in studio today by not just a member of our team, but someone that we do look up to, a very visionary talent, someone who has all the right answers when we need them. Chase Morales, filmmaker, is introduced to us a few years ago. We've been privileged to work with him on a few projects together, and it's amazing that you had time to come into our studio and sit down and talk to us about storytelling and filmmaking. Would you introduce yourself a little bit to our audience real quick?
Yeah, I'm Chase Morales. I'm 28 years old, or I guess 28 in 6 days. So a little premature there. Yeah. Is that the little kid move to do whenever you're like, no, I'll be like, 1 year older, but it's like your birthday was yesterday type of thing?
No, yeah, I still do it. I'll say I'm 39 and 3/4, 39.99.
But yeah, I'm 28 years old. Originally born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, moved around a little bit, lived in Florida. Have loved being in North Carolina last couple of years in the Winston area. And yeah, I'm a DP cinematographer, do some G&E,
Okay.
and like to be creative now and then.
So I'm going to pause a couple times throughout our episode because when you throw out words that like our average listener won't know. So a DP is?
Director of photography.
Okay.
So fancy word to be a videographer, I guess you could say.
Okay. And the G&E?
G&E is going to be grip and electric, so doing a lot of the lighting when it comes to production and filmmaking.
That makes sense. And so where did you pick up your passion from filmmaking? Was this in Pennsylvania, or you went to school in Florida? Was this when you got to Florida?
Yeah, so it probably started when I had a couple buddies in college when I was living in Orlando, and they were going to school for non-film photo related things, but they were doing freelance stuff on the side. One super talented photographer, was doing stuff for Toyota and that kind of thing, and then the other one I think went to school for graphic design, so was in the creative field, but was a really talented videographer.
Okay.
And was doing a lot of stuff in
and
sports
you were
and
introduced
stuff.
to them?
Yeah, just by working on a couple projects here and there. I helped him out on some stuff and was like, man, this would be really cool to do one day. At the time I was going to school I started in engineering because I loved physics in high school, but then realized it changes to be pretty much math in college. And so I was like, not doing that, and went into criminal justice and was studying that for a bit. And then kind of ended up, making the switch halfway through my sophomore year after moving up to the Raleigh area in North Carolina. Got an opportunity, and that's kind of taken off from there.
That's amazing. So do you see some of the engineering or even the criminal justice background as you approach storytelling? Like, is there a component there that you think this kind of weaves through?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there is. For me personally, I think the beauty about storytelling and having a career that's creative is you get to look through so many different lenses. You get to have these little partnerships with different companies, different groups, nonprofits, things like that, and you get to listen to what they're hoping to tell, and you get to try to bring that to life, and invoke emotion and try to connect with who they're wanting to connect and who they're wanting to help.
Okay. So I like that. When you are thinking back to when you first kind of began this journey, maybe like your first solo project, but what stands out in your mind as being sort of that memorable, like, this is what I want to do, this is the story I want to tell, or this is what I want to create?
Yeah. Man, I remember going with my grandma and my two brothers that are younger than me to Hawaii, and like having a GoPro, and it was like back whenever, GoPros, there's a couple models that had been out, but it was very much like, GoPro is flying across the scene to be this like little pocket-sized camera that you can capture memories, create stories, do things like high speed, low drag, like for the average consumer.
Absolutely.
So it was probably going on a trip to Hawaii where it was like, you point a camera in any direction and you're like, this looks good.
It's just
That
stunning.
where I was just like, it probably elevated me and I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. Whenever in reality, I was like not ready for what it was. But that was probably my first project, and one that I'm proud of being, I don't know, being creative on, but it was not good creative,
Well,
if that
that's what
makes
I was
sense.
wondering. So we say a lot that as a creative, we see our style emerge in the rearview mirror. We don't
Yeah,
set out to accomplish a certain
100%.
style.
Yeah.
You make it your own
Yeah.
on your journey.
Yep.
Looking back at some of those, do you ever rewatch old projects you've done and think, "Oh my God, what was I doing?"
Yeah, it's definitely like through your hand. You're like, why did I make this? Like, and you're like, please no. No, it was like I released that, but no, I think that's a great point that you're saying. It's like, the style, you see it in the rearview mirror, because I feel like it adds so much authenticity if you do it that way.
I agree.
If you do it where you're like, I want to be like this, and that was probably part of my problem whenever I was getting started. I was, inspired by people like Sam Colder or Rory Kramer, who were doing like EDM stuff for like the Chainsmokers,
Okay.
right? And doing like these, like jumping out of helicopters and like very GoPro, very like high action stuff.
Right.
And that was just like how it looked and how it was, delivered to me through like social media. And I was just digesting content initially through that. And that was kind of like the inspiration. But I think as life has kind of went on, I've realized that one, that's really hard to do because everyone wants to do it, because that's the first things you see is that really flashy stuff. Um, but I also think that there's so much more you can do with storytelling than just like flashy EDM event
Right.
captures. So,
Talk to us about that. Like, what storytelling do you prefer? Like, what are
yeah.
those projects that you find yourself being involved in and
hmm
saying, this resonates with me a lot authentically?
Yeah, totally. I think the stuff that I enjoy the most is things that align with like my hobbies and my passion, because it doesn't feel like work.
Okay.
There's this interesting kind of dilemma with creatives where it's like, okay, I'm creative and I enjoy this and I'm then good at it, but then it's like I can make money from it, but then it's balancing that like
Right.
passion to work, right?
Absolutely.
And so a lot of creatives can get burnt out, especially whenever it comes to freelance, because there's no like anchor of steadiness. Like it ebbs and flows so much. So I think to answer your question, um, the stuff that I enjoy the most is um, stories that make an impact, that help people, um, but also align within things that I love to do myself. I think those are the projects where it's like, this doesn't feel like work. Like, people always say to do something that doesn't feel like work to you. It's always going to be some type of work, and there's going to be stuff where it's going to be a job. I feel like a very small percentage of people who get to do something and it's just like, they've been really blessed with opportunities and networking and just knowing the right people to like feel completely like, this doesn't feel like work at all. But in reality, like a lot of people, and especially when you're getting started, there's got to be something that you enjoy, but you should have at least a partial outlet, so that
Yes.
way you don't get burnt out, because it's so easy to.
I co-sign 100%. Two small tangents, but I think it was Walt Disney that said that when he set out to make a movie or a cartoon, he wanted to make the one that he wanted to watch
hmm
because he felt like other people would want to watch the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you were talking earlier about, being authentic to yourself, being authentic to the storytelling process,
hmm
it's easier to tell a story that you authentically would watch.
Yeah.
You're not feeling like it's work. You're not sacrificing any, creative or even a moral, obligation or a moral
Totally.
fulfillment.
Totally.
You're able to present something very authentic, very true to yourself,
Yeah.
and balancing that with the idea that we are trying to make money.
Yeah.
This is a business. At the end
Totally.
of the
Yeah.
day, that's got to be very special when all those stars kind of align on a project, and
hmm
you think, oh, I can throw myself into this,
Totally.
wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
So, what passion projects do you find yourself kind of pursuing or seeking out?
Yeah. So after doing, DP, videography, creative, that kind of thing for coming up on like 8 years, or about 8 years now, I think I'm wanting to do more in the outdoors and kind of sports world.
Okay.
Growing up, being outside and playing sports, it's one thing that like I really enjoy. So that's probably the number one thing that like I'm trying to move towards. I've kind of had that background now of doing a little bit of everything, which kind of plays into like the freelance,
Right.
one of the benefits is you get to dabble in so many different things. You
For sure.
learn the experience that each of those different fields brings in itself. But kind of bring it back to something that keeps the creative stuff flowing. So
That is awesome. I like that. When we were talking about like every videographer sets out with like the very high end, very high caliber.
hmm
I think in the world of commercial photography, we find ourselves we all want to be National Geographic
yeah,
photographers,
100%.
and unfortunately, in our industry, the closer we can get is like a really cool animal hide on a chair.
Yeah.
But we try and we keep dreaming. When you sign on to a project, what
hmm
are you leading with in terms of like what makes you? It's not just a financial decision.
Totally.
You could
Yeah.
book your whole calendar with things
Yep.
that pay the bills. So,
Yep.
what leads you through a script or a proposal or a request for a proposal that you
hmm
think, yeah, I want to be a part of this project? Is it like story related or
hmm
is it environment? Are you saying, oh, I'd really like to shoot that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's again, I know I'm talking about a lot of balances, but I feel like freelance has so many things that you need to kind of juggle. But one of those being is this going to be, there's obviously the financial side, like you're saying, um, there's the portfolio piece. You're always wanting to like grow into what you're doing,
Right.
unless you go super niche, straight out of the gates, which is probably even harder than just being broader as a
Agreed.
freelancer
100%.
because it's just, unless you know the right people right out of the bat and you have a lot of really good opportunities, you kind of have to be broader and then kind of niche down a little bit.
Right.
So if that's the case, then I would say I say yes to projects based on if they bring opportunities in a field that I want to pursue.
Okay.
If obviously if it's good pay, or if it's also people that I enjoy working with. Sometimes I say yes to stuff because I'm like, I really enjoy working with these people.
Right.
And that's one of the things that's great about freelance is you get to meet so many people in the industry, and it's really cool whenever you're like, working with those people that a lot of corporate people would, or people working in corporate would say, these guys are awesome at what they do individually, whether it's a producer, people, in G&E, people that are DP, camera ops, that kind of thing. But it's cool to be able to invite everybody in
Yes.
as you get to know people over time and be like, hey, these are the people that I can worry about this role X, and I know that they have Y and Z taken care of because they love
Absolutely.
what they do and they're good at it and I trust
Yeah.
them. So,
That makes sense. So, talking about your role, you were recently awarded an Addy, an advertising award for a collaboration
mhm.
you were invited in on. I kind of want to walk through sort of the logistics and all the moving
Mhm.
parts that were involved in bringing that commercial to life that resonated with enough people that it actually won an award.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it takes so many different hands to do something well. It's why whenever you're watching your favorite movie, the credits are like so long, right? And there's so many names with like, there's 50 different types of producers
Right.
or, directors, right? Because
Yes.
there's one person can't do it all well. So it's like you get people that do one little thing and then it it all comes together whenever
Right.
you have that right team. So yeah, on this project in particular, got brought in to do G&E stuff, so a lot of lighting. And it was really fun because it was for a recruitment style video for an electrical power line company.
Okay.
Um, but we were able to get really creative with it. And so shout out to like all of the, the creative background that goes into like making it possible. Cause that's where a lot of like the trench work takes place, is
Absolutely.
in that pre-production, that creative. And then you have, people that are bringing in talent. You have people that are project managing it, running the schedule. You have to have the creative director that's bringing the vision in, a really
Right.
talented DP who's doing camera operating work as well. And I think you also have to have the full team just to really uh, be gracious, efficient with each other as well, and like everyone's time on set, and know like
Okay.
these are like the responsibilities and things that Chase is doing over here, or the DP is doing over here. And so
Right.
yeah, I was brought in to do G&E work on that one, and got to do a bunch of really cool stuff, including some night scenes with rain
Right.
machines and
Through dangers, through darkness, a beacon of hope emerges. Every connection that's made, every line that's repaired.
Very cool.
Simulating like a big storm coming through, the power going out,
Very cool.
how this electrical company, pretty much brings power back to your family and your home miles and miles away type of thing. So it was really fun. Yeah.
That is amazing. So that kind of leads into the next question, challenges. Like speaking about that project, what challenges are there that like you weren't anticipating or, that when you were in the middle of it? Like I think rain machines and weather machines and electronics and camera gear.
Yeah.
Like what happened?
Yeah. So, I guess just breaking down the rain machine, essentially it's two big stands. It has a crossbar pull of like PVC pipe. And we, fortunately, because we were filming kind of out in the country in this town or this zip code that was a lot of agricultural, we were able to bring in somebody who had like a big water tank truck. So that covered our need. We're in the middle of this country road where we can have just water flowing the whole time. Because it's an electrical company, we have bucket lift trucks that we can then throw a huge light up that would normally in like a cherry picker be really hard to do resource wise, to emulate moonlight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So whenever you're doing rain scenes, you always need to really backlight the water because it really just doesn't show. So we're able to kind of use the rain machine to shoot through this goalpost to make it look like a storm and then have a little bit of hitting the talent just past it. And then backlighting it by this moonlight. And then we have these trucks with flashing lights. So we're doing working a lot of color, creative stuff like that into it. At some points we probably had like 8 different lights running along the side of the road because we have generators and the cherry picker off this truck. And so it's really fun, but there's a lot of resources that can go into it. And some projects like that, it just works where it's built into the project and you're like, okay, we can like kind of push the creative on this one because we have the resources to do so.
That's good. And the company's backing it too. So they're cooperating. It seems like you probably had a larger, roadside crew than if they were just restoring power to the neighborhood.
100%. Yeah.
When you approach a project like that, you have your assigned role, you know what you're responsible for. As opposed to you are now the filmmaker. This is a client who's reached out to you. Walk us through that process. Do you go through a pool of talent that you're going to try to draw from? Or are you going to figure out, is this a 1-person production or is this a 14-person production?
Yeah. So a lot of times it'll come down to the scope of the project to determine like, okay, is this going to be more of like a 1-man or 2-man band type of project? Is this going to be something that's going to be a little bit bigger where we can, venture into 5 to 8 people or, and then after that, it kind of just, you figure out what you have resource wise. So I think it's just figuring out what the client's wanting, what are the expectations, what's the scope of it. And then from there, it's like, okay, what resources do we have available? Is it like, okay, they really want an emphasis on location or it's a look this way or that way. And if so, it's like, oh, well, now we have to do all interiors, but at nighttime, or, we have to do stuff exterior. So we have to plan multiple days because we need a lot of stuff to cover in the script or in the creative deck. And we need it to be sunlight for way longer than what sunlight normally is, sunset or sunrise. So I kind of figure out what the client's wanting, what are the things that are most important to them. And then from there, it's figuring out the resources of, location, crew, talent. That's a big thing. There's a project that I was going to help out with the other day that didn't end up panning out because they really wanted talent and talent's really expensive, especially in major cities like that. We're going to be in a major city. And so, which sometimes that happens. And so it's just kind of part of that roller coaster. So
in our own productions, we find that people will say for a lot of different reasons, some of it's financial, some of it's, location based, but, they'll say, well, we'd like to use local talent. Sometimes that is more expensive, from a production standpoint than if you just paid for talent in the first place, just getting people to work with their marks, getting people to, understand blocking and framing. Like there's an art form to being talent, especially on video, where it's moving talent. It's not just hitting the pose and holding it. Where do you come down when it, like, do you have reservations if there's going to be talent involved, or do you approach those projects from a different standpoint as opposed to something that is outdoor and very candid? You're not really how much is light a consideration if you're focusing on an outdoor project, I guess, is another part to that question.
Yeah. I mean, so the cool thing about filmmaking and all that is essentially you're just controlling and manipulating light to convey an emotion. Like that's like kind of how, which is kind of cool when you think about something as powerful as light. Like you're bouncing it, molding it, shaping it to have depth because it's two-dimensional versus a three-dimensional whenever you're walking around in the world, right? So being able to convey that is always the goal. And so it's nice to have, you know, talent that is can be like hitting everything that they need to do, because if, you know, you're having somebody who maybe isn't as experienced when it comes to talent, now it's like, okay, we have to do a bunch of extra takes, now we're having to lose a shot because it's getting towards the end of the day. So that's like what you said, where it's talent can
Absolutely.
become more expensive if it's local,
Right.
and not, maybe not professional for lack of better words, right?
Right.
Is and everyone has to grow and become that, because the reason why that talent can be expensive is because they're good at what they do.
They're good
So
at what
it's
they do.
deserving of it. So
That's right.
yeah, I think that's a big consideration is figuring out, like, whenever it comes to the light, what are some tricks and some tips that you can do to, whether it's, you know, so oftentimes you don't want to front light somebody because
Right.
it gets less depth than shooting on like the shadow side of something.
Yep.
But if it's daylight, maybe it's better to, and it's just like a rough time of day, maybe it's better to block off or shoot on the side of a building that blocks off a bunch of the sunlight and then reshape everything just because you have
Right.
to work within the schedule. So that's always the hard part is, you know, scheduling is really, really important. Like I would
Yes.
rather have, um, you know, less resources on the day and like put more resources into pre-production and schedule out exactly the most efficient way to do it, than, you know, having those resources on the day of and having and not having that.
That totally makes sense.
So
So covering, the pre-production, figuring out your locations, location scouting,
mhm.
day of production,
Yep.
and then you're going into your edit or your post edit. What do you Where do you put the majority of your attention to a project? Is it in the pre-production and the scouting, or is it in the edit when you have everything and you say, okay, now how do I shape these pieces into a story?
Yeah. So like for whenever it's kind of like my own clients or own projects or ones that I'm kind of taking a little bit more of a lead role, versus whenever a company is like, hey, we need you to DP this project.
Right.
It's kind of like different points of joining in on the project and
Right.
different responsibilities. But I guess speaking from whenever it's, um, you know, let's just call it my own client, and it's like I'm doing more of the producing and a little bit more of the pre-production, I have the opportunity to do so. I think most of my time would probably go to the pre-production setup, because everything can just kind of trickle down, right?
Right.
If you're efficient with the pre-production and the planning and the location scouting, um, you can then be like plan ahead and troubleshoot, like, okay, I now know that this is there, or
Yeah.
that factor is going to hit, and then on the day of I can prepare for that,
Right.
and then I don't need to pivot and lose time and not get a shot,
Right.
or I can plan some things out. So I think it's really important to do the pre-production. And then if you are shooting less because there's less things you have to worry about on the day of, then it's less you have to sort through whenever you edit.
Absolutely.
So ideally the workflow is, you know, it might seem weird to a client or someone to be like, hey, we're putting so much money before we even step foot to hit record
Right.
on set,
Because that
right?
saves you money in
But
the
in the
long
long
run.
run, it
Yeah.
really will
Yep.
save you money, and it'll be so much more efficient, and you're going to have a much better experience too. Like everyone on set, and you're going to want to build that relationship with that production team, that, you know, that agency, anything like that, because you had a good experience.
Right.
And if you're building that relationship, and you're, you know, working on multiple projects, you can then build off of those things, and that's going to have a much greater impact than just like one-off projects, or like working with
Right.
somebody and being like, well, I didn't really like the experience as
Right.
much, because, and that's really important, and that's a big thing for, you know, agencies and production companies, is like
Absolutely.
the experience is huge. It's a good, you want to obviously have a good video, but
Right.
a lot of people can make great videos,
Yes.
but it's the, you know, the communication, it's the experience as
It's the
well that
relationship
adds.
you're building, right?
Correct.
That's,
Yep.
you want to continue to do business with. When you look back on the last piece of business, you say, oh, that went so well, even if they don't understand, and I think that's important too in our industry. we're asking clients to give sort of a leap of faith in our creative process, but then we're being asked, or in some cases we're asking them to allow us to justify our own terms in creating that, so it does feel awkward probably for the first project or two with the new client, but then when they start learning they've got this well in hand, if they need 55% of the production schedule devoted to pre-production, there's a reason, you know, that because I agree. And then you have less to weed through when you're trying to edit and trying to salvage something that it stays true to the original storyboard. Talk to us a little bit about the rig that you shoot with, sort of where you evolved from and why you landed on that, and any gear that you have to have that makes you feel like this is going to be a great project.
So I shoot on a Sony FX3, typically Sony lenses. Sometimes I'll rent some cinema ones depending on what I need, but and I kind of think the reason for that is mostly just because that's what my friends had for video whenever I was helping them out way back when. It's kind of like was working with Sony. I think it was like a Sony A7S2 was like what we were shooting on whenever doing stuff for Toyota or things like that back, years ago. And so whenever I got my first camera, I was doing mostly photo, probably mostly photo, to be honest.
Okay.
I was working at a ice cream shop just as like my during college job after moving to Raleigh. And so they wanted me to help out with social media, and I was like, sure, make a little bit extra money. And so the camera I got was kind of a balanced photo video one. So it was a Sony A6500 was my first one.
Okay.
And then I've kind of upgraded to more of an FX3 as time went on. But I think some of the things that I wouldn't want to like not have on set would be obviously outside of camera and lens, ND filters, huge. If your camera doesn't have them built in, just, variable ND filters on the front of your lens that can instantly, make your footage look a lot cleaner, a lot more cinematic, just by not having to shoot at everything flat aperture wise, or cranking your shutter so high that it like looks like it should be in slow motion, but it's not because there's no motion blur or anything like that. So I would say ND filter is a big thing. Monitors are great because you can use a lot of tools for exposure built in that cameras don't always have, especially for people that are just getting into, video photo world. Whenever you have, a camera, unless it's a cinematography camera, it's not going to have a lot of those extra features. So having a monitor just to get data and information, kind of take it away from just like what your eye's seeing and seeing like what are the facts of like, the brightest point of my image is hitting at 90 IRE, which is just like the exposure index. And being like, okay, even though it kind of looks overexposed, I know it's not overexposed. And so then you get into post. So just things like that. So I'd say a monitor is great. And a variable ND is probably going to be my number one thing.
Do you prefer to shoot handheld or on a gimbal or on, tripod or combination?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the project and the feel. So that's where you would, at the beginning of your project or when you're working with a producer, if you're a DP and it's a little bit bigger project where maybe there's a producer and they're bringing you on to a project, it's, okay, what's the goal of this project? What kind of emotion do we want to convey or feel? A lot of that can be the immediate answer to, am I going to shoot handheld? Am I going to shoot gimbal? Am I going to shoot on a tripod? So it really depends on what's important that what you're capturing.
To pre-production.
Going back to pre-production.
Absolutely.
But my favorite outside of if it's just free reign, I really like gimbal just because it's you can get a lot of sweeping dynamic shots, which I really enjoy, kind of like longer, more one take style stuff. Those are always fun. I mean, whenever you see them in movies, you're like, the shot's been going on for like a minute and a half.
And there are some directors that are so much better at that than others. David Finch, I think, is very good at long continuous shots, and I think when people start appreciating those, you start noticing it more. When you allow yourself to. But I think I'm trying to think of David Cronenberg is also very good for like those extended shots where you just think like, my God, that camera is traveling 500 feet in a shot up a staircase, and they've never broke off the characters. It's pretty incredible. What about like techniques or processes that you're experimenting with, or you're excited about, or you're starting to implement? And this may go into your the propensity to try to start pursuing outdoor projects?
Yeah.
Are there some neat techniques that you're playing with there?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I've been able to do in kind of the last maybe 6 8 months ago, I got to do a project which they don't come around super often. It's actually the first one that I've been able to work on. Doing some camera AC work was virtual productions, LED walls. That was
Okay.
a really cool experience. So it was kind of more of like an end of the year project for a company that wanted to do like awards but make it fun and exciting, and they in Blender built this like 3D world that they would walk through that kind of looks like Mario in a way. And it's got cool transitions handing off from one person to the next, talking to camera type of thing. So that's been really cool to kind of see that in person from like, you see it in Mandalorian and like a lot of these, movies where locations are tough and again, going back to lighting and stuff like that and scheduling,
Right.
where if you have the ability to be in a virtual production, it can be sunset for 24 hours. You know what I mean? Like you can just
You're
like
controlling
be in
it.
sunset forever. And so that's really cool. I would love to do more of that. But like, as I'm even saying this, I'm like, but maybe the reason why I like doing outdoor stuff is because I like being outside. So would that take away from it? So it's
That's
always
true.
this like back and forth of like,
There's a
even though that'd be really
balance.
cool,
Yeah.
to get more experience on like virtual productions and LED walls and that kind of thing.
Yeah. You have balance in every aspect of your career.
Mm-hmm.
You're balancing the outdoor for the indoor, the controlled lighting for the organic lighting. What are the biggest challenges of being an independent filmmaker? Like, what are the biggest rewards? And then I could imagine a one-word answer for the biggest challenge, and that would have to be just the stability. But
100%.
talk to us about like the rewards of being a freelance and some of those challenges.
Yeah, I think the biggest rewards are going to be that you get to work with so many different people, whether it's crew or clients, is you get to things are always fresh. I feel like, it's not like you feel like you're going back to the same thing at the same desk every single day. So you get to be out and about, you get to learn a little bit about different parts of industry and businesses and what they do and how they help people and what their goals are. And I think if you are taking that in, you can learn from a lot of it for yourself personally, but also for your business as well.
Right.
So I think that's a big thing. And then just being able to see all the different creatives be creative in their own way. There's not like, I could have a creative decision to do one thing and someone else could see it another way. And neither of us necessarily are wrong. It's just our creative, like, kind of take on it. So
Right.
I think it's cool to see so many different people that are creative in different ways. I think it can really make you a better creative in the long run if you're open to that and being okay with like, this is my style and I'm not going to, after you develop that style, I'm not going to try to be like everyone else, but how can I be nimble on set whenever it requires me to problem solve and do things by maybe taking a different creative choice, or maybe it's a different technique that somebody else uses that you saw to achieve, could be the same goal and the same outcome, or it could be something different.
That's amazing. I love that answer. Organically, every one of these episodes we've done, when we ask people about, sort of where some of the rewards are, it is largely in creatives surrounding themselves with creatives. You're inspiring each other, you're raising each other up. And you're right, there's 1,000 different ways to arrive at the same answer. It's the lens that you tell your story through that is uniquely yours, and no one else can do that quite like you are. I like that. So in challenges, the challenges that we face as independent freelance.
You said it. Stability is the tough thing about freelance. I've been there plenty of times in the 8 years where I've been like, okay, do I have to get a full-time job? Do I have to,
Right.
go into some type of agency or company or something like that full-time to just to have stability? I mean, it ebbs and flows. There's months where, you're booked completely and you're like, man, I don't have time to
I'm
have time
sure.
to myself or my family or things like that. And then there's months where you're like, what do I do?
I've got to do something,
I got to do
right?
something.
And it's got to be so hard to turn projects away, even when you are flush,
Yep.
because you think it's feast or famine. Like,
Totally.
I don't know when the next one's coming.
Yeah, there's been times, and where it's been slow, and I've like taken projects that um, don't the equation of that project, for lack of better words, doesn't meet where I normally want to be, whether it's not getting paid as much or not, or something like that.
Absolutely.
And so, which is really hard because you want to, you want to respect the people that have paid you what they've paid you in the past. And then
Right.
you also want to say, like, I don't want to hand out, free work or discounted work or things like that, because then it
Yes.
like that takes away from the value of what someone, values at. Because essentially they're like, I don't think you're worth this because I'm offering you this. I'm not offering what your typical rate is, or, what this project would be if you were to do it. So
That's got to be so difficult. That has got to be the most, because you don't want to devalue your own time or your own ability.
totally.
On the same hand, you don't want to, like, people are nervous to test something out the first time.
Hmm.
And if you give them that impression that, like, well, this is how to get me, but you're at the right time to get me at this rate,
Yes. Yep.
visit me again in 6 months and we may be having a different
Yeah.
conversation, but
Yeah.
now you're going to love what I've produced for you at a different, standard. Yeah, that has got to be one of the most challenging. So in terms of, weighing out the pros and the cons and the stability and the creativity, um, do you love what you do? Like, this is your dream job.
Yeah. 100%. I'm super stoked that I have the opportunity. I'm blessed with the opportunity to work with people that, um, you know, have helped me get to where I am today. Whether it's, the guy that came in to pick up a gift card for a giveaway at that ice cream shop a while back, that was like, hey, we need someone to help out with freelance, can you want to chat to me, and now to where I'm at now, or being able to work with you guys, and like on like a decently long-term basis for a good bit,
Absolutely.
and be able to just get to know you guys, and the blessing that you guys are creatively, but also as friends and stuff like that. Like that's that's what's really, important, and what is really nice
That's
is you get
great.
to meet those
And
people.
I know we're looking forward to working with you a lot more here very soon. You're
Yeah.
working with us, this coming weekend and then again in September. And
Hmm.
I think that is going to be, we always like having you, in these, productions. It gives us a sense of everything is going to be taken care of. Like, we have somebody who is kind of over everybody's shoulder saying, who's got this responsibility? Because if no one does, I'll jump in and
I'll
do it.
step in and help. Yeah.
What advice would you give to our weekend listeners, or our overnight students, or our hobbyists that are thinking, I really want to do something like this? Like, where would you direct them if they were sitting in front of you and saying, how do I do what you do?
Yeah. So I guess like a little background, kind of touched on it before. What was I was working in an ice cream shop. I got the opportunity. Somebody was working for a production company that was also doing like entertainment to show what the city had to offer. Was doing a gift card giveaway in conjunction with like doing a promo video to kind of populate their socials about the ice cream store. And so I got that opportunity to shadow and learn. I didn't really go the traditional film school side of things. And maybe, the way that I did it is more traditional now, with
I
all of
think
the
so.
resources that people have
Yeah.
with YouTube and online education classes and things like that. So I kind of shadowed him for a bit, and he's super talented. Went to, on the opposite side of things, he went to school, went to Savannah College of Art and Design,
Okay.
studied Hollywood cinematics, and
Wow.
like very successful in what he did, narratives and features and stuff like that a little bit before working. And so it was very much, like it's happening and you're doing it, or like it's going to crash and burn type of thing. He was very like, what's, the saying, like, into the frying pan or the fire type
Yeah.
of thing. Like that's
Yes.
what it felt like sometimes. And in the moment I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like, but like after coming out of it and getting through it, and just kind of just taking a step at a time, and in my own free time learning from what I call YouTube University,
Yeah.
and going that route, it kind of has just progressed to allow me to kind of be where I am after 8 years. So I would say like a great start is, it depends on what you're really looking for. I feel like now I'm starting to shift more from maybe only a partnership model where I'm working with a bunch of different production companies and
Right.
wanting to get some more of my clients. But I think that's just because the fact that with that comes a bit more travel. And so that can be more difficult, like, with having a family one day and that kind of thing, is you want to be a little bit more close to home. And that's where kind of priorities and things can change is, whenever you're younger and you're wanting to get into something, you're fine with the travel. You're fine with the excitement of like the buzz and going around
it's
and
probably part of the
moving a
pro
bunch.
list.
It's a pro. Yeah. And then as you get older, you get boring. No, I'm kidding. But
No, you
no,
do.
but
I can
you just
tell
don't want to be.
I can tell you it happens.
You just don't want to be home
It
as
becomes
much.
a con list.
Yes, it can drift into that range a little bit. And so I would say when you're getting started, partner with people, production companies, get to meet all those different creatives. It's like a beautiful thing, and it's a great thing to learn why people are creative, how they're creative. You learn from that. You also get to network and meet people. I feel like networking and having time out and about in the real world and doing it, even if you're maybe not as good at, at filmmaking or video or photo or whatever, it can be so much more valuable knowing the right people than knowing how to do everything.
Okay.
I feel like there's been scenarios where I've been like, yes, I can do this. But in my mind, I'm like, I don't know how to do this. But if I know the right people and I have the opportunity to say yes, I can go home and pull an all-nighter if I have to and be like, how do I
Crash course.
How do I do this?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think knowing the people and having the network is really important. And I feel like a lot of, where I'm at today is from word of mouth. It's from just knowing people and just trying to be enjoyable on set. You know what I mean? And like be a people person and
I love that plug.
So
word of mouth. That's great.
Word of mouth.
The podcast.
Oh yeah, I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, it was perfect. Yeah. So another little bit that I do want to start adding into each of these episodes, but it's just going to be a prompt. I would just want you to come down on one side or the other. Robots and AI are going to take over the world and enslave us all, or they are great learning tools and assists when we need them to create something that is organic, authentic, very human, and story driven. What side of the fence do you fall down on this AI?
I think they're great tools. I think they might disguise themselves as like the end all be all,
Okay.
but there's going to be like, in my opinion, I feel like even if it transitions to where so much more creative is being processed through AI or, computers, robots, anything like that, I think it's going to be like not shunned, but like there's going to come a point where people are like, I want the organic stuff. I think the organic stuff is going to shine through. Good. Ultimately, I think that's where it's at. And I think there are going to be certain aspects of the industry, creative industry, that are going to get hit more than others. But I think ultimately, like when it comes to the storytelling side of things, I think it's going to be hard to do that on the scale that somebody who's really creative and takes pride in what they do and understanding people. I think it's going to be hard to translate that.
Absolutely.
Through
I agree.
AI.
The human element, which is the magic of storytelling, I feel like will always be a human learned and human conveyed emotion.
Yep.
And working with things like lighting, how much does a computer understand about how the human emotion reads lighting in a scene?
Yep.
So I agree. I think that's great. That conversation topic has been coming up very organically the last 4 or 5 episodes. So I think I'm going to start integrating that question, like AI, like friend or foe, like what side of the fence are we coming down on? So are there any exciting projects that you would like to promote or talk about as we kind of round the episode out?
One thing that I'm really excited about that is more of like, I guess, a personal project kind of thing coming up is, like I said, I was getting into more of the golf field, more of like what I'm excited about. Have a really cool opportunity, even like as of this morning, a call just like worked out where I get to go play like a really awesome golf course in Florida with my buddies that actually got me into video.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
So like with one of our friends who's more in like the business sales side of things. So him and I hopped on a call, and now my friend who was a photographer, a freelance photographer, now is a firefighter. We get to be like, hey, we got this really cool opportunity to get essentially treated by this resort to do some project stuff for them. Cool. So that's like a cool, like fun thing that's coming up. So really excited about that.
Just getting the band back together.
Just getting the band back together.
Absolutely.
And to be almost kind of like treating the people that helped me get to where I am today.
Fantastic.
With like kind of, so that's like one thing that's exciting for sure. And I think one of my favorite projects are the personal projects sometimes, where it's there's not really an agenda, but it's just like you kind of go out and film a
Yeah.
little bit like as you want to, not because you have to.
Yeah.
Whether it's like hiking up in Grayson Highlands with my wife and like camping out there and like making like a little video about the journey to make a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, but it's just like fun stuff that you're throwing together. It doesn't feel like work. I feel like that's what really keeps the creative kind of going, is having those moments where you don't have to meet an objective. It's just you're doing it because you like it. And sometimes there's moments where you are just sitting there and you're like, I could do something creative here, but it's just sitting still in those moments and
Yes.
being like, I don't have to do anything here.
That's right.
So
Learning when
there's
to leave the cameras off. you know?
exactly. There's like that quote from The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, where he
Yes.
finally at the end, he's, caught up to this photographer and he's like, are you going to take the picture of this snow leopard that this
Right.
guy's trying to take?
Yep.
And he's like, well, sometimes if I enjoy a moment, I
It's-
don't.
I
I just like
wanna
to
be
take it in.
here
Yeah.
that moment. Yeah.
And so I think that's also really important for creatives, is like to not feel like you always have to take the picture.
I agree, and I think that young creatives and creatives new in the game, they do feel the need to convey almost like a justification of their creativity, and they don't learn that drains batteries. Because you're either going to take a candid shot, not be happy with it, and then start questioning yourself, or you're going to take this amazing, beautiful shot, and that whole memory is going to be about the shot and not about what you were actually doing in that moment. And I think either one of those have the potential to drain your creative batteries, instead of using experiences like that to recharge
Totally.
those exact same
Yeah.
batteries.
I think the more that you're still and you maybe don't take the photo, the more clarity you'll have to do well whenever you do take
In
the
the
photo.
moment. Absolutely.
And that'll shine through for you and for clients you're working for and that kind of thing. So
That is fantastic. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you for either business or to be inspired by you or to invite you on another podcast?
yeah. So Instagram's a great spot. Vimeo as well. Instagram, Chase_Morales_ is kind of like personal page. I'm terrible with promoting my own business on socials. I feel like it's hard. So it's probably out there, but you probably don't need to look at that for right now. Just, yeah. The more of like what I'm passionate about shines through on my own page. Building a website, so that'll be coming soon. Movingframes.com, I think. Hopefully that'll be right. I'll throw a little something up there, maybe. Logan, you got this?
We'll
You
put all the graphics.
yeah. Yeah. What else was it? There was
No,
one
that
too.
was it. I think that
Okay.
was it. We've got Instagram. We've got
Yep.
a website. You said you're going to start doing websites, or you're going to do your own website?
Sorry, I'm redesigning my own website right now.
Okay.
So
I was
and that'll
gonna
be
say,
Moving
and
Frames.
you're offering web development.
Yeah, free
No.
promo for this if you. No, I'm not great at websites. But,
Me either.
but anyways,
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming in and
Thank
sitting
you.
down. I know that you're busy, and I know that we're getting ready to work together. We're actually ending this, I think, into a production meeting for this weekend. So
it's gonna be great.
we've got tons of stuff to do, but very excited to sit down and talk to you. Very
Yeah.
excited to kind of get that filmmaker's mindset. We've talked to a lot of different creatives on this program, and outside of being surrounded with filmmaking every day, all day, it is so entertaining for me as someone that is involved in the industry to sit down and talk to a filmmaker, and see it from your side, especially as a self-employed freelance artist. That is a world that I think all of us want to work in more than we are able to sometimes. So
100%.
thank you very much for taking the time out of your day and sitting down with us.
Yeah, happy to be here, and thank you for this. And I think this is really important, just because it allows people that don't have that community right now
Right.
to be able to experience that. So
And it peels the curtain
love it.
back. I think it demystifies a little bit
100%,
about what we do.
Makes it more approachable.
Allows clients to appreciate the numbers that we give them, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, stuff they don't typically see. So
That's right.
Cool.
Thanks, Chase. I appreciate it.
thank you, appreciate it again.